meeting you right where you are on your foster care journey. This is the Forgotten Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Forgotten Podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Cabe, and I am so happy to be with you. If you are part of the foster care community, passionate about serving, or simply interested in learning more, we are here for you. In every episode of this podcast, you will hear stories from men and women who have experienced foster care to one degree or another. They may have grown up in the system, are caseworkers, foster parents, or others who are here to bring you hope or encouragement. If you enjoy this podcast, please subscribe and share it with a friend. And remember, you are not alone. I hope you enjoy the Forgotten Podcast. All right. Well, Amanda, I am so happy to have you on the show. Welcome to the podcast. And I want to let you know it is always good to hear from those who have lived experiences, because we want to really better understand the foster care community. And the only way to better understand is talk to people who've actually lived, right, in it in some aspect or another. And so for you, not only do you bring the perspective of a person who works in child welfare as a case manager, and that's really what we're going to highlight and focus on today, but you also have been a foster parent for about a year and a half. And in that time already have had 10 children through your home, which is crazy. So
it's a lot
thank
of kids.
you for what you do. That's a lot of kids. And I know that you have said before that foster care has been something you've been passionate about for a very long time. Do you remember when you first learned about this whole world of foster care?
I know I've always wanted to probably adopt at some point in my life, so foster care just kind of came with that. Mm-hmm. When I was in high school, I had worked at a daycare, and I had direct impact and could directly see foster children within the system, and kids who were getting sent home who shouldn't, kids who were sitting in the system longer than they should have, and it just really kind of enhanced that I wanted to do that foster care part of it and to get back to the foster care system.
Yeah, very cool. And so do you remember even thoughts as a young child?
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
I've always been a kid person, so even as a little kid, I was like, oh, I'm going to be a baby doctor. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do something with kids. And that's always just been something I've been passionate about doing.
Yeah.
And just, again, kind of always knowing I want to adopt at some point in my life. I want to be a foster parent at some point in my life. It's just kind of something I've always wanted
That's
to
cool.
do.
It's just been in your DNA.
Yeah.
Very cool. Did you have personal experience with foster care and know anyone who had foster parented or anything like that when you were younger?
No, my first experience really with a foster parent wasn't until I was in college working at a daycare.
Okay. So talk to us about where you feel obviously you always wanted this, but you used the word that you've been passionate about foster care. Why passion? Where has the passion come from? What drives the passion?
I don't know. I think just I love kids. I've always loved kids. I mean, I think all kids should be set up for the future that they deserve and to have a chance to do great things in their life. So it's just, I don't know. I want to help. I want to be able to help. I want to see children helped and, again, have what they deserve. So I think that just drives that passion for it.
Yeah. Just this deep desire for kids. I love it. That's beautiful. When you first thought about a career or entering, when you were graduating high school, when you thought about what am I going to do, was it again still just kind of a natural thought that, okay, I'm going to go into child welfare, or how did that go?
Definitely not.
Okay.
Ideal goal was I wanted to be a pediatric nurse and I wanted to work with children on that aspect of it, and that just that wasn't how things played out. And after a few hardships, I was like, I just want to be done with college. I don't care what I do. I just want to get out of here. I just want to, I don't know, I wanted to do something with kids. I knew that, and I just wanted to get out of college and then figure out what that was. And I had a friend who at the time worked here where I work now, and I saw what she was doing, and I was like, that's it. That's what I want to do. That is, as opposed to nursing and seeing kids and being helped kids in that way, it was, I could be right here with foster care, directing it in a different way than I really, I guess, even ever thought was possible.
Yeah. So when you kind of trained for that and started in that, what were your expectations of what this role would look like? And then let's talk about what was the reality.
I was kind of blind coming into it. The girl I knew, I just knew she worked with foster families, and I was like, yeah, that's what I want to do. Like, foster parents are the superheroes of the system. Like, they're the ones who are with the kids. They're the ones who do this. Like, we're going to work on the good side of foster care. And again, that reality has definitely changed how I view things. But I was like, I can work with foster parents and people who help work with children. And that was really all I really knew that I was doing.
Okay.
I just knew I wanted in, whatever it was, I wanted in.
And so when you first stepped in, your first week, your first couple months, what were those like?
So I started 2 weeks before COVID happened.
Oh, well, that was a good timing.
Yeah, so I stepped in, and then it was immediately like, y'all are working from home, y'all are doing this, and it was like 100 changes all at once that people who had worked here forever were then trying to step back, and they were trying to teach me, and then we weren't in the office to learn, and it was FaceTime these families. I'm like, I've never even seen these people. Like, that's so uncomfortable.
Wow.
So it was definitely very different stepping in, definitely into the unknown for everybody. And it was a learning curve for everybody who had been here. And starting off at that time was rocky, but it threw me right in.
Oh, yeah, that is challenging to be working with these families, never meeting them and starting it off through FaceTime. What, like, talk to us, like, what are some very practical day-to-day, like, what's a day look like as a case manager?
Every day is definitely different. So, like, today is a paperwork day. So today I'm working on service plans for kids. I'm writing up my logs for the kids that I've seen. Later today, I'm going to go do a home visit. I'm going to go see one of my kids. We're going to talk about the kids in their home and where their case is going. Today was one of those days where we have an intake coming in, and this is what we want to do and where we want to place this child. And these are these kids that we have to move out of this home. So every day is very different, but you kind of get a little bit of everything every day.
Yeah. What would you say are some of the hardest parts of this job?
You see a lot. Like, you see kids from hard places, and we get to see, like, not every intake, but 90% of intakes that come in, we get to see them, and seeing why kids are removed is very hard, because even though, like, we may not have a home for them, we're still going to look, we're still going to see what's happened to them, and, like, bearing the trauma of every single kid, even if it's a kid we never even meet, of what has happened to them and why they've come into care.
Yeah. Do you feel like it is hard to, a typical, quote, 9-to-5 job, you do your job and you go home, right?
Definitely not. Not even close.
Tell us more about that.
Full-time, 24/7. Everyone is a little bit different in how they handle that. I am, again, very passionate about what I do. My phone is on 24/7. You can always catch me with my phone. All the other girls, they clown me about it, but that's just how I am. I want to know if my families need something. I want them to know that they can call me. If something happens late at night, like, we don't necessarily have to do our own placements. We have an on-call person, but if one of my families is getting a kid, I'm going to be there and I'm going to do it because those are my people. Like, so again, definitely not 9 to 5. I'm definitely woken up in the middle of the night and been like, I forgot to do this, or this is about my kid. I have to do this tomorrow. So it's definitely not a job that at 5 o'clock you drop it and don't have to think about it until you get here. It's always there. Yeah.
And that, I imagine, can be a pretty heavy burden at times.
Yes, definitely. Sometimes there are very hard days, again, seeing what we see. So trying to find different ways to kind of cope with that, release how you're feeling. I listen to my music really loud. So, like, some days it's like I have to get in the car and I have to turn it up loud and go to do what I need to do to kind of de-stress and before I go home.
Yeah. Do you ever have trouble falling asleep at night because of the things you've seen or the things you're thinking about?
Oh, definitely.
Man. Yeah, I think it's just helpful to hear that because, you know, when we look at things kind of black and white or cut and dried, it's like, oh, it's just a job. But it's not just a job, right? It is, you're charged with making sure the kids in your care are safe, right? And that they're in a safe home. And it's heavy burden. And I just want our listeners and anyone to know that, like, what you do, Amanda, is so important and it matters. And we see you. And we really are thankful. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Tell us what else, what is it like this is your platform right now. So what do we need to know about what it's like to be in this work? What do we need to know about case managers? Like, give us what you got.
One of the hardest places I feel like as being in this part is, not all, but typically I'm going to see the kid more than the caseworker is. I'm going to see the kid more than the CASA is. The family is going to talk to me more, but our voice, we don't get a voice in court. We don't get to say what's happening. And that's hard because we're the ones who the foster parents are consistently talking to. We're the one who the kids are talking to. Like, we help bear that burden for them. So, like, we may know more about your kid, but I don't have a voice in court to help say that. And if your worker isn't doing very good and they're not representing you well, like, that's hard to see that they get to be the voice and we don't have any say-so in that. Interesting.
So explain that a little more. What's the difference between, you said, a case manager and case worker?
So I am the case manager for the family. So my foster families are always my foster families no matter what kid they have. And, like, the caseworker is going to follow your child.
The kid.
Yeah, so wherever the kid goes, that caseworker is going to go. So, like, their job is the kid. Their job is to talk about the kid. Like, they're not going to see that side of it that we do, that we know the family. We know their history. Like, we kind of know what they may struggle with more or what they have going on. And the caseworker's not going to know that because they're just there for that one kid. They're not here to talk to the foster parent about how they're doing and how they're coping with things. It's, how's the kid doing? Oh, they're good. This is what's happening. I'll see you next month.
Got it. So everyone wears a bit of a different role, right?
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
and their priority is the kid and your priority is more the family.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Talk to us too about your heart for biological families and what we need to know about them.
Again, that is something that has definitely changed. Again, my perception when I first came in was, I want to work with foster parents because they're the good guys. And there is no such thing as good guys and bad guys. And you learn that when you come into the system and you see kids who have families who love them so, so much, but have generational trauma of, this is how they've seen things and they don't know any better. Like, their whole entire family does drugs. They've been doing drugs since they were young. Like, and that's hard because they don't know any better and they want to do better for their kids, but they don't know how because they don't have either the support or the resources or even the know where to start for that.
Yeah.
And again, there's no good guys and bad guys. I've seen a lot of amazing biological parents, and, like, seeing my families work with those parents and advocate for those parents has, like, it's very special to me because that's not the side of it that you think. And everyone has that, again, that generalization that I had. Like, foster parents are good people and biological parents are not. And that's not it. Biological parents are just, they're 90% of the time, they're kids who were also struggling, or kids who were in the system, or kids who should have probably been in the system and weren't.
Yeah, needed support.
That's hard.
Yeah. I think the phrase "everyone has a story" comes to mind, right? Like, there's always a reason for things, and it doesn't excuse necessarily some things, right? But it does help us to better, and I'm talking about this overall. You know, there's always a reason we do certain things. It doesn't always excuse what we do. There are still consequences for actions. But man, it does help us better understand and have some empathy for what might be going on. Yeah. And I think that's something that we as a world need more of, empathy.
Absolutely. And I think the sooner that people look at biological parents as parents and people who love their kids, it changes your perception. And I know I've had a few families who, well, mom is a bad person, and then they hear mom or they see mom and they're like, she's not a bad person. Like, she doesn't know. And I think humanizing biological parents for foster parents is a very big thing and something that everyone should do, because as soon as you realize they're just a person who's struggling, it will change your perception of how you handle the case, how you talk to your kids about their parents.
That's a big one. Go into that a little bit more. How are you talking to your kids about their parents?
Yeah, that's a big one. And we have foster parents who, I mean, I don't want to say villainize them, but essentially, like, they either don't talk about him, or your other mom, or your biological mom. And, like, we don't want to talk to kids like that. That is their mom. That is their dad. It doesn't matter if your kids call you mom and dad. You can have two mom and dads. Like, you can be anybody to that kid. That relationship with their parents does not take away from their relationship with you. Like, it is ingrained in them. I mean, that is their parents. Regardless, good or bad, those are their parents, and you want to keep that positive image of their parents, like keeping them excited for visits, and not, oh, you're gonna go see your mom today. Be prepared. It's, hey, we're gonna go see your mom today, and like keeping that positive image of their parents, because your kids need to see that. You don't want your kid to form an alliance between you and their parents and have to choose, because that's not fair to them. They are bearing the brunt of the situation that they had no control over.
Yeah. I think that's a really important point, is it actually hurts your kids in the long run. It's not doing a service to them. It's actually hurting them.
Yes, exactly. And I don't think many people realize that it's not their intention, but it's, oh, well, this person hurt you. Why would you want to go see them? Why would you want to be with them? But that's not what it is. That's my mom. That's my dad. It doesn't matter what their home life was like. That is their mom and dad. Yeah. Or that is their family. That is their parent.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whoever it may be.
That's a great thing to note. Also, talk to us about advocating for the best interest of the child in your care as a foster parent. Like, what encouragement do you have to foster parents, to birth families? What encouragement do you have around this idea of advocating?
So again, that can be a hard one. You have to put yourself and your own desires aside. I know I talked earlier, like, oh, when I grow up, I want to adopt, but I do not sit in that place right now. I sit in, I am a foster parent. My job is to be your foster parent and get you home, because I feel like as soon as your ideal of, I want to adopt, you can't fully support reunification if you're already thinking, I want to adopt this kid. Like, that's not helpful. So putting aside your own wants, your own desires to really feed into your kid is, you're here, your goal is to get you back to your mom, and we're going to do everything we can until that's not an option anymore. Yeah. And again, it's very much putting yourself aside and fighting for your kid and fighting for visits. And our first kids, they had a transporter who would supervise the visit. She'd be 20 minutes, 30 minutes. She was up to an hour late one day. And the biological parents, they didn't get that time back that was wasted by a worker. And I fought up the chain, and I was like, this is not fair. If you're going to be an hour late, you need to give them an hour. Like, it's not fair that they're losing time with their kid because of somebody else. Like, so again, like, I wanted my kids to see their parents. That was their time. And I had to fight up the chain to see that changed. But they were just like, oh, like, it's not a big deal. And I was like, it is. Like, this is everything for them. And advocating for those parents and seeing services that those parents might need that I think would be helpful. Like, we had a family, and she just didn't know how best to feed her kids. So she was loading them up with Gatorade. And he started getting sick, and he was sick after visits. And I was like, hey, maybe mention try this. Like, this could be helpful. And seeing, like, the shift in how their visit changed, because they weren't loaded up. They weren't getting sick. They weren't overcompensating at a visit. I mean, that's kind of hard to say, but, like, they're overdoing it at the visit, and it's hurting the kid in return. So, like, even just little tips like, hey, maybe try this. Hey, I think this would help, or this is how they've been. And again, like, being able to relay that information to foster parent or, like, to biological parents, like, this is what we're struggling with. This is what we're doing good with. He does really good when this happens, like, to help clue in their biological parents, like, of what could be helpful to the kids.
Yeah. Because again, if your ideal is adoption and this child is in foster care with the goal of reuniting and returning home, you really can sabotage that goal. Maybe even unknowing, but it's like, maybe I don't really want to give those tips, or I don't want to help, in those ways. And again, you mentioned, Amanda, you got to put the kid first, and we got to get ourselves out of the way. I mean, we really see foster care as gospel work. It is about reunifying, reconciling brokenness, right?
Absolutely.
And when that can happen, that's beautiful. And we want to fight for that. We want to cheer for that. We want to support that idea. Another one that you had mentioned earlier on, before we got on air, but you really have a passion for helping people educate themselves about foster care. Why do you feel like that's so important?
Because I don't want everyone to have the vision that I had, like, foster parents are these great people, biological parents are these bad people. And even how I talk, like, my cousin is a teacher, and her seeing how much I talk about reunification, she's like, it has shifted how I look at my kids who are in foster care. And that's what people need to see. Like, again, these are just parents who are hurting, and reunification is a very beautiful thing, like, to see parents rise up above addiction, to rise up above generational trauma. Is very beautiful. So, like, helping to educate in, this is why we do this. This is what it does for the kid, and like educating again about how the system works, how things work, what we want to see. That we want to see kids reunified. We want to see families put back together, and that is a good thing. And again, almost every kid, when they get a foster kid, they're like, "Oh, are you adopting them?" And like that mindset is not good, and that's really hard as a foster parent, knowing what the goal is and trying to kind of have to explain the whole process to everyone you meet. Like, no, that's not what this is. That's not our goal. Like, just to educate, to help other people to understand and empathize more with the foster parent and what they deal with.
Yeah, I remember that as when my husband and I were foster parents, it was very challenging because your emotions are saying, I want this child to stay. And yet your heart is also saying, I want this child to be reunited with their mom. And so I totally resonate on visit days when you were talking about, hey, you get to see your mom today. And I remember trying to cheer them on and getting excited with them. But my heart, it hurt, right? And that's the idea that it is okay and it is normal to do the right thing, to cheer your child on, to support this, and to still feel that pain inside, because you do love them, and we are emotional people, and we do care. So it is okay to cheer for them and to hurt at the same time. It's part of it, and it's not a fun part of it by any means.
And that's just it. It's definitely a roller coaster of very conflicting emotions, and often, like, I'm excited for you, but I'm heartbroken for me.
Yeah.
And I'm upset for you and mad for you, and all of these things all at once. And that's hard to explain to someone who doesn't sit in the system.
Yeah.
Especially like at reunification. Oh, aren't you so sad they're going to be gone? I'm like, I am so excited that they get to go home and be whole and be with their family. And that's hard because that's not your natural response, and that's not what people expect you to say. But it's hard to say, I'm happy, but I'm also devastated for my life now without them.
What would you say to people, those who really are new to this world, who maybe their first exposure is a relative or friend who is doing foster care? What kind of language would you encourage the support people to use, to say? What are some things they can say to be helpful?
That's a hard one, but mainly just, how can I help you? How can I pray for you? Like, do you need anything? Those, like, it's hard to explain, but like when your kid first leaves, like, it's like this empty space, and you're like, oh, they're gonna come back at any time, and like it's hard to like kind of feel like, for it to feel like they're never really coming back, or like they're not gonna ever live in my home. Tomorrow's not gonna be the same as yesterday ever again, and like it's just a very weird place. So it feels very like surreal when it first happened. So offering those supports and knowing it might take a month, 2 months, 3 months before those families are really grieving, because again, you're grieving a child that you love and may never see again, but they're still walking the earth, just not in the place where you had them. So again, it's essentially you're grieving. So just trying to be conscientious and not, when I hear a lot, well, when are you getting your next kid? Well, what's next? And that's hard too, because you're grieving and people are like, hey, when are you getting another one? I'll call you for another kid. Like, you can't talk to people like that. These people are heartbroken, and you can be excited and happy and heartbroken all at the same time.
Yeah. That's the crazy thing.
It takes time to come forward and come through all those emotions before you're really ready to move on and take another step.
Yeah. I just bought an and sign, ampersand, I think it's called, where it's a sign of an and, the word and, but because I just think that I have it in my house, and I have been encouraged because my kids have been asking, what is that? Why do you have that here? And I just tell them, thank you for asking, for one. I'm excited to share. But I tell them, I want us to always remember that it is good and okay and normal to feel both thankful for something and also maybe feel a loss. Some of my kids have been adopted. It is good, and it's good to know that God is good when things are good and when things are hard. I just think this whole idea of I've been thinking about it a lot. I've been talking about it with people a lot lately, because I think we live in this world with these emotions like you talked about that are so conflicting at times, but that doesn't mean they're wrong. It's being human. It's being real. Let's talk. I know we've kind of gotten into these hard goodbyes, but how can we best prepare for those hard goodbyes?
I think, especially in the beginning, if you keep your mind on the prize, like you are going home, it doesn't cease that, but it's almost like you're always preparing for it. As I say this, I found out today, like, we are getting really close to the kids we have right now going home, and it's like, I am so excited for you, and we're going to start talking, and we're going to start preparing, and it's almost like my heart can start the process of goodbye before they're gone and start settling in. So, like, one thing we specifically did with our first kids was we took no school, no nothing. We went, we had fun, we did a lot of things we wanted to do because we knew we were going to be gone, and really cherishing our time together. And I mean, my kids will probably be with me another month and a half, but like, just start that process now. Like, let's pack in all this we can now, because I know that you're going to be gone. And again, you are in a weird position in foster care, is that you know that, I mean, again, I hate to compare it to like grief and child death, but that's kind of how it feels sometimes. Is just like you're losing somebody, and it's like, let me pack all I can into this time that I have with you before potentially I never see you again.
Wow. That's a heavy thing to think about. But I think you're right about preparing yourself ahead of time. Even when you first, I remember years ago, a podcast that we did talking about goodbyes as well. We'll find it and link it in the show notes, but talking about why it's so important that we go into foster care with the right mindset in the beginning, that this is the goal to return them home. The goal is that there will be a goodbye at the end, right? And I think, like you said, if you can really be preparing for that along the way, it's not going to necessarily make it easier in the moment, but it is something that you're expecting and you've been preparing for, which is a different mindset than if it feels like a total shock, or I was not thinking this would ever happen.
Yeah. And again, just staying prepared and making it a very happy occasion for your children, and reminding them, like, hey, in this many days you get to go home to your mom and you get to do this. Like, that's so exciting for them, and kind of putting yourself in their shoes, like, how exciting is this for my kid to go home, and how happy does that make me to know how happy they are going to be to be home and to get excited about all these new things for them that they get to experience, and that when you can see the future that your kid is going to have at home with their natural family, how they're supposed to be. Like, I think it kind of changes how you look at goodbye. It's so hard, but knowing it's what's best for them can kind of change how you look at it, I guess.
Mm-hmm. What about those times when you feel it isn't best for them? How do you navigate those emotions when you think, I see things that I feel like no one else has seen?
That's hard. I haven't specifically had that happen to me per se, but I've seen it happen. And I mean, all you can do is advocate, and that's hard. And that's where that advocating without standing in the middle, like I've seen people who were like, well, you're too adoption motivated, and that's why you're looking at it like this, but trying to see very much with clear eyes and to stay on the neutral side of things. Like, this is what's best for my kid, not this is what I think is best, but this is what I think is best for the kid, and advocating that. And this is why, like, your documentation is so important. Like, hey, I have this concern and this is happening after visit, and like making all of those notes, and I have this concern and I have this concern, and trying to get those concerns addressed before your child goes home. So, I mean, God forbid they do come back or something does happen, that you have shown that I have addressed this, and either it was a failure on somebody else's part, but like these are the concerns that I've had, and I've tried to address them, and I've tried to get help. But trying to address those issues before kids go home is helpful, but again, you're at the mercy of someone else at that point.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is at the end of the day, we don't have control.
Yeah.
Right? But I think that's why I think foster care is such an important thing and I don't know if this will come out sideways or not, but as a Christian, foster care is such gospel work, because we are literally, you've said it over and over, Amanda, laying down our lives. We are literally putting ourselves out of the focus, out of the reason we do things, and we're putting somebody else in front, and this child. And we don't have control. But I think that's where, as a Christian, I can look to the Lord and go, okay, but you have ultimate control. I can trust you. You're bigger than the system. You're bigger than anything. And sometimes we just have to leave. We have to leave it in his hands, even if bad things happen, right?
Absolutely.
Because he is still good, even if the worst thing happens. And that's hard.
And that's definitely a hard part, is that you don't have control. And I think realizing you don't have control, but doing what you can. I mean, essentially in your position, that's all you can do. And you have to believe the best thing for this child will happen. And again, like you said, God is still good, and you are still good. And that's kind of like when I do get upset, and when I do feel like that kind of out of control, that I do listen to my music really loud. And Forever Rain is one of the songs I'll always listen to. And it's like, you are good when there's nothing good in me. And that's usually how it feels, is like, no matter how I'm feeling, you are still good. And I know that that is still going to be fulfilled in whatever you do. Yeah,
that's good. That's awesome. Well, I'm so thankful for you and for the work that you do and for your heart. We need more people like you, Amanda, out there in the field. It's an important job. Before we close, is there anything else that you have on your heart right now that you just really want to share with our listeners?
I mean, essentially, if you're a foster parent, I hope that you can kind of look past yourself and see what's best for your kid, and make sure what you're doing is in the best interest of your child. That if you're going into foster care, you're doing it for the right reasons, and that you're able to kind of lay it down to the Lord and let him take it how he's supposed to. Remember that his promises are good, and that he will be faithful regardless, and that that's all you can do. You may not be best for your kid. What you want best for your kid may not happen, but you just kind of have to lay it down and set yourself aside for your kids. And I don't know, it's not a natural process, but it's definitely worth it.
Yeah.
It is one of the most rewarding things I've ever done, working within the system and seeing kids and loving kids, having kids in my home. It's very rewarding. Again, it's not an easy process by all means, but I would always encourage to get in contact with your biological families and work with them and let them know, I am going to do whatever it takes to get your kid back to you. This is how I want to help you. If you need help, know that you can contact me. And that's one of the most fulfilling things I've seen is we do still have contact with our first kids' parents. They invite us to birthdays. They invite us to do things. Those kids call me mom, and they are okay with that. And that the humility in that she's okay with someone else calling her kids calling someone else mom, and that is so rewarding and one of the most special relationships I feel like I have. Being able to root on biological families and let them know that they can come to you, and having them ask you for things and asking for help or what can I do to help. And that's one of the most rewarding things I've seen on this side, is to see that relationship blossom, to be able to keep kids in contact with their families and to work with them. And I don't know, it's special, and I wish everyone could do it because it is so beneficial. Wow.
Amanda, thank you so much for sharing. I loved how you said it's not natural, but it is worth it.
Absolutely.
That's a great way to say it. And ultimately, we will experience more of Jesus through this work because it takes we can't do it on our own. I mean, it's very, very, very difficult. I don't know how it's possible to do without him, without his help.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being on today.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Well, I hope that today's episode encouraged you wherever you are on your foster care journey. We want you to stay connected, so be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you will never miss an episode. Also, we have great content at theforgotteninitiative.org. Thank you for watching. I cannot wait to be with you next time.